About artificial intelligence, what comes to mind for you? Somebody yell it out real loud so I can hear you. What's that? Turmoil. Okay, what else? Annoyance. Okay, what else? Helpfulness, yeah, okay. It's a new generation perspective, right? Anybody else got a thought? Yes. Say it again. Hopefulness, okay. Oh, awfulness. Okay. Yes. So a number of things come to mind when people talk about artificial intelligence today, and one of the things that I've noticed is that there's a wide spectrum of thoughts about artificial intelligence and what it'll mean for us as human beings and as Christians. And so part of this discussion about AI started with me and my son, Ethan. And I was, this was about 2023. Can we take a little heat off the mic from the back? Can we take the mic down just a tiny bit? It's a little bit loud, okay. So my son, Ethan, and I were always talking about tech together. And I was installing a vent fan in our bathroom. I'm kind of a DIY guy, so I was doing it myself, putting a vent fan in there. And he comes in and he says, "Hey, Dad, there's this new thing. It's called Stable Diffusion, and you can give it a text prompt, and it'll draw a picture for you." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "You just describe what you want in words. You type it into the window, and it'll make a picture of that thing." I was like, what do you mean? He goes, "Just try it. Tell it to draw a dog riding a bicycle, eating a banana, and it'll do that. And tell it to draw it in a cartoon style, or tell it to do it in the style of Picasso or Degas or anybody else." I was like, okay, tell it to draw a half Asian guy in a bathroom installing a vent fan, kind of angry, which is what I was doing in that moment. And he did, and out pops on his computer screen like 10 photorealistic versions of me doing exactly what I was doing in that instant. And these are pictures that didn't exist in the universe 30 seconds earlier. They were completely novel, and I was like, whoa. My immediate thought was, wow, I feel really bad for visual artists. This is gonna crush them. Cartoonists, people who illustrate for a living, people who paint, people who draw, even photographers. I was like, this is gonna be hard on the visual arts. That was July of 2022. In November or December of 2022, he brought me this other thing. He goes, "Hey, Dad, there's this thing now called ChatGPT. Maybe you've heard of ChatGPT. It is a large language model. It's an artificial intelligence model that basically can write as well as any college graduate can write. In fact, it's so smart that it can pass the MCATs. It can pass the bar exam, the law exam, entrance exam. It can get like a 1400 on the SAT. It's brilliant, and most legal documents that you put into it, it can parse those faster than any lawyer or any legal assistant can. It can parse them instantly and tell you exactly what's happening in them, what's at stake, what you need to do. I had this long document that I got from the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. I was filing for a patent, and it's very complicated. It's mind-numbingly complicated. It's like 25 screens, thousands of little blanks to fill in. You have to get it all right or they reject it. And I got 2 rejection letters from them, and I couldn't even understand what the letters were saying. I was like reading them going, I don't even understand what they're saying. Like they're rejecting this based on what, So I basically scanned a copy of this and I put it into ChatGPT and I said, "What does this letter say? Tell me like I'm a kindergartner." And it just breaks it down for me. And I'm like, oh, that's what it says. That's how smart ChatGPT is. So it brings me this, and I thought, wow, this is gonna be really hard on educators, right? This is gonna crush them. This is gonna be really hard for teachers because students will be able to just put a prompt in and out pops a beautiful paper and they can just turn it in like they wrote the paper. And I thought, wow, this is gonna be troubling. So that's why I say, as we talk about AI, there's a lot of things that come to mind, and some people feel uneasy about it. Some people just don't know about it. Some people are scared of it. Some people are optimistic about it and are excited about what's going to happen with AI in the future. So, but there's a number of things, and what I wanted to tell all of us in the room is that none of this surprises God. Remember back in Genesis 1, God is the God of language. These are large language models. God is a creative God. These are creative tools. And so none of this surprises God. God is in complete control of his created order. And God is the original creator. And what's really cool about this is God created us in his image, which means that we are created to also create. Okay, so God creates human beings. And what's one of the first jobs that God gives human beings to do? Name the animals. So as soon as Adam is basically awake, he says, Adam, I've got work for you to do. I've got a job for you to do. You need to name all these animals. Now, I don't know if you have ever thought about this before, but if you think about the mammoth task that must be, can you imagine naming all the animals? Do you remember in biology class having to do the kingdom, phylum, all those different orders all the way down to species and, like categorize all of them? I mean, there's millions of animals and millions of different species of animals and bugs and all kinds of things. There's like a million different kinds of beetles. I mean, how could one human mind possibly categorize all that? Adam must have had an incredible brain, but God gave him this job to do. He said, hey, I want you to use words to differentiate between these living things that surround you. These are all things that I created. I've created you just like me. Well, not just like me, but in my image. And you're to use words to make sense of all of this order, right? You're to bring it into order by naming it. So this idea of naming things is very, very powerful. So Adam names the animals, and before there was any technology, there was taxonomy, right? He had to break things down into different taxonomies. And this is where God really invites us to join in this very first act with Adam. He invites us to join as human beings his creative process and to bring meaning out of what he's made. So one of the things that God has done, as you asked the question about imago Dei, the image of God. What is the image of God in us? Do we look like God? I don't know. Do we think like God? Maybe. Do we act like God? Hopefully sometimes, a lot of times not. Do we reason like God? Maybe. What is God's image in us? Well, one of the things that we do know that we do like God is that we use words. We know that God uses words, and we also use words. And God has given us this powerful thing. It's the idea of naming things. Now, some of you have been around long enough to have really hard things happen in your life. Really tragic things, sometimes abuse, sometimes things that maybe happened when you were a kid that you didn't even understand what was happening. And it wasn't until later on in your life that you were able to name those things, to talk about them, maybe sometimes in therapy, maybe sometimes with a prayer partner, maybe sometimes with your pastor, and say, hey, I just want to talk about what happened because it has lived in this place in my mind where it didn't have a name. It was just a set of fears and experiences and thoughts and scary things and hard things that I didn't understand. And for me to talk about it and put words to it and name it is powerful. And God gave us that ability as human beings to name things, to call things what they are. And things that we don't know what they are, we're given the ability to try to describe them so that we can make sense out of them. Because as soon as you can put words on things, you can start to make sense of them. They start to have a different kind of reality for us. So Adam names the animals, and words give us shape. Language brings light. When you start talking about things and describing them, it starts making them clear. When you look things up in the dictionary, when you're like, well, what does that word actually mean? When you look it up in the dictionary or read about it, and you're like, oh, I see some words that I recognize that describe what this word means. And now that brings me light, that brings me insight. And when we name things truthfully, we partner with God. Isn't that cool? I think it's pretty cool. So there's this moment. Oh, I need to go back. Sorry. Okay. There's this moment that between Genesis 2 and John 1 that we can't skip, and it's Babel. Do you guys remember the story, the Tower of Babel? So as the story goes, this is a long, long time ago in primordial history. As the story goes, all the people of Earth had multiplied, and they decided to get together and build this big tower. And God was like, I wonder what they're doing. And so God goes down there and kind of checks it out, and he's like, wow, they're building this tower. They've developed brick technology, and I talk about this in my book a little bit. They've developed brick technology. So, odd-shaped rocks don't stack very well, but if you can bake them and make them all the same size and shape, they stack pretty well, right? So this is a technological advance to build with bricks. So they started building these things, and they could build buildings taller and taller, and they started building this tower. And I don't really think that God was that concerned that they were going to be storming the gates of heaven with a skyscraper or something like that. God was really more concerned, like, you know what, these human beings are getting ahead of themselves a little bit, and they're starting to forget about me, and they're starting to think that they can do anything on their own without the help of their Heavenly Father. And so I just need to humble them a little bit. I need to slow them down a little bit. After all, I didn't tell them to cluster into cities and build tall buildings. I told them to spread out, occupy the whole earth, multiply, and be fruitful, right? And instead of spreading out and doing what I wanted them to do, which was fill the earth and subdue it and be good stewards of it, they're clustering into these cities and they're trying to go upward, right? And I want to remind them of the original calling, which is go out there and spread out and live a good life. And so God confuses their languages. This is important because we're talking about large language models. These models, these AI models, use human language, and most of the best ones use the English language, which is crazy. They use these very, very advanced neural networks to be able to come together with using human language to create incredible computations. So all of this, the reason why I'm talking about God speaking and the importance of words and this idea of Babel happening is because all of these things are grounded in human language. The Babel event was God saying, hey, you guys are all speaking the same language. I need to confuse your languages so that you'll spread out. And you remember what happened when all of a sudden you're like, I can't understand this guy standing next to me when 5 minutes ago I could understand him. Now he's speaking a different language. Oh, but I hear someone over here I can understand. So they would go off and find the people that they could understand their language, and then they would all lock arms and head off in their own direction, and this group would head off in that direction. That's the story of the Tower of Babel. And I think the interesting part about this is that humanity took the gift of language, the power to create and connect, and we used it to elevate ourselves. Let's make a name for ourselves. And when we use words to elevate ourselves, we repeat Babel. And when we use words to serve one another, we reverse it. Where this really came to being for me, came into reality for me was I was watching this YouTube video of these two technologists from Texas. And they were talking about why has AI technology developed so quickly in the last couple of years? Why has it gone vertical so quickly? And they said, oh, it's because the large language models are all now speaking the same language. Like they're all able to communicate in English. So you have these AI silos in computer science and manufacturing and genetics and all these different other scientific fields. And they were developing solo in little silos. But as soon as they started speaking the same language, they all just could collaborate, and the development curve went vertical in 1 year. And as soon as I heard them say that, I was like, oh my goodness, this is an anti-Babel moment in history where the languages are coming back together again and the tower's going to start going up again. So just a little thought. I'm not passing theological judgment on it. I just notice it. So here's what's really cool is The big trick, the cool trick, and I call it a trick, but it's not a trick at all. It's actually the greatest story that ever happened, is that God went from using the word to create the universe to speaking his own self into the human story, right? When the word, the Logos, became flesh, God spoke light into the darkness back in Genesis 1, and then he speaks himself into the world through his son, Jesus Christ, who's also ironically, not ironically at all, right? Systematically called the Logos. I love that, or the Word of God. John 1 is one of the most incredible stories. It's this idea that God has performed his greatest act in history, and that's speaking himself into our story. So from Genesis to John, this pattern is clear. God speaks, creation responds. And when we create, when we speak light, when we write truth, when we compose beauty, we reflect God's voice. And there's a key idea that I wanted to just underscore here. Oops, let me see if I can go back. God is the God of language, and every time we bring meaning out of chaos, we echo God's creation. Okay, so the second point is this idea that as culture speaks, we're called to engage. And this is what churches like your church, this wonderful church you have here, we're called as believers to live in this community of other people, of other believers, but also to be engaged in the culture that we're living in. And I know you're not like this, but in churches that I've been in, a lot of Christians, they want to distance themselves from culture. They want to separate themselves from culture. They want to critique culture from this faraway distance and just snipe at people from the sidelines. And they don't want to engage in culture. They don't want to get in there and say, hey, how can I understand the culture, be in the world, not of it? I'm not a product of it, but I'm in it. I'm different. I'm called to be salt and light. I'm called to be something distinctive, something different, but I'm in it. I'm in there. I'm mixing it up. Most of you have had careers and you've been at workplaces and you've been around and you've had friends. You're in the world, you're in there, and you're mixing it up with people. And as culture begins to speak in areas like artificial intelligence, we as God's people are called to engage with that. And what a lot of believers are doing is just saying, I'm afraid of AI, I don't understand it, I'm not going to engage with it. And what I'm saying is, you're already engaged with it whether you think you are or not, because if you have a smartphone, you got AI in your purse or in your back pocket. If you drive a car that has been made in the last 15 years, you've got AI in your dashboard. Most of you have Alexa or Siri sitting on your countertop or your bedside table. Every computer, this talk right now is being broadcast live over the internet. I mean, it's all touching AI. If you use any kind of technology now, any kind of modern technology that's been developed within the past decade, you're using AI. It's a part of your life, whether you know it or not, or like it or not. So we're called to engage it, not to condemn it from afar, but to enter the context. Do you guys remember the story of Paul going to a place called Mars Hill? So he was in a city called Athens. And you remember Paul was like the first avant-garde missionary. He happened to write about 2/3 of the New Testament as well. So kind of a prolific mind and prolific actor in the early church. So Paul goes to Athens, and I think the scene is so cool. So he's sitting around with all of these philosophers. They didn't have a lot going on, so a lot of the philosophers would just get together in the city square in the middle of the day, and they would just talk about ideas, right? So there was high philosophical content. And Paul just strolls into the middle of this philosophical debate with all of these professors. Like, these are all these are students of Plato and Aristotle. These are really smart people. And he just starts looking around. He's like, hey, see this statue right here? It's got an inscription on it, right? And just as your poets have said, we're like God's workmanship. In him we move, we live, and have our being. Like, as your poets have said, we are the offspring of something. Let me tell you about the God that you're an offspring of. And he just starts preaching right there, right? But he gets in there, right? He engages the culture, and he uses parts of the culture to relate to the culture. He contextualizes. And I know this church supports missionaries. And every missionary who goes into another cultural context, they have to contextualize the message. They have to say, hey, if I'm going to speak the message of Christ in Thailand, I have to do it differently than I'm going to do it in Central Tennessee, right? I have to do some things differently. I have to say something differently. I have to understand some things differently. First of all, I have to speak the language and build relationships, understand the customs and the rituals and the culture so that I can speak the truth of God into this context, into this new context. And some of us might feel like artificial intelligence and technology is this faraway culture, but God has called us to engage that culture and to contextualize with it and speak into it. I already got ahead of myself. So Paul's said, as your own poets have said, we are his offspring. Paul used culture's own language to point out the truth. So our Athens today, our Mars Hill today is in the digital world. It really is. And this is where God has called us to be engaged as believers, not to stiff arm it. Some of you might be like, hey, this is way beyond me. I'm past the point in my life where I can speak well into this area. That's not true at all, because you've got children and grandchildren and other people in your life that you can influence, that you have more influence over than you think and you know. And I see a lot of young people out here too, and you're right in the middle of this culture. And if you want to take your faith seriously, I would say engaging in this way is the next mission field for you. Algorithms and AI are the new forums. Will we engage with them faithfully is a question that I have for us. So we don't condemn culture from afar. We don't copy culture without discernment. We engage with wisdom and conviction. And that's what faithful engagement means. And that's part of why I wrote this book. Paul says it well when he's writing to the Corinthians. They're talking about these people who are preaching the gospel, and they're doing all of these strange things that the Jewish parts of the family of God didn't really understand. Some people are preaching in ways that they didn't really appreciate. Some people are eating things that they thought, hey, those things are off limits. I thought we weren't supposed to eat those kinds of things. I thought we weren't supposed to eat meat that was offered to idols. And Paul was like, hey, look, you guys are getting caught up on all the little details, right? Those things are important, but they're not as important as the central message. The central message is for us to preach Christ, right? Christ and him crucified is the central message. All the rest of the stuff that you're arguing about, don't worry about that as much. It's important, but it's not the most important thing. And he said, here's the thing, man. If I'm with people and they're eating meat that's been offered to idols, I say a prayer and I grab my steak knife, I can go for it. If I'm with people that offends, then I don't do that. I've become all things to all people. I don't break God's law. I don't break my conscience, but I'll do any of these things so that I might speak truth into the life of some of these people. In other words, I engage in the culture in ways that might make some other believers uncomfortable. If I'm with them, I'm not going to offend them. I'm not going to cross that line and offend them and do something that's going to offend them. If I'm with these people, I'm not going to do something that offends them or causes them to stumble, right? I'm going to honor that. But I'm going to become anything to anybody as long as it helps me to preach the gospel truth of Christ, the most important central message. So that by all means, all possible means, I might save some. So Paul didn't run from Mars Hill, he climbed up it. And our Mars Hill today just happens to be digital. So the third point that I wanted to make this evening is, as we create, God is glorified. We are God's workmanship, created in Christ for good works. Workmanship in the Greek, in some translations it says you are God's masterpiece. Really, what it says is you are God's poema. You are God's poem. God has written a poem, and the poem has your name on it. You are the poem. You are God's workmanship, created in Christ to do good things, good works. And part of me is why I wanted to write this book and engage in the Christian community in this way is because I believe that we give God glory when we create beautiful things that God has created us to make. There's only one of you out there ever. There's only one of you. No one has ever been just like you, and there will never be another person just like you. You have been created so uniquely and so specially. You are God's one time, once and done, never again. He wrote a poem and he broke the mold, and he will never write that poem again, and that is you. And you've been created to do beautiful things. And so when you create, when you write, even when you write a card to your niece or your nephew or your son or daughter, when you write something, when you create something, when you draw something, when you program something, when you take a photograph of something, it's your eye that says, I see this in a certain way, and I want to capture this picture in a certain way. I want to frame it in a certain way. When you create anything like that, I think you're giving glory to God, because God is a creator. God expresses. And you are his poem. And every act of creativity that you do becomes a reflection of God's glory. And I have a lot of friends that are artists. Some of my closest friends are very successful photographers and artists here in Nashville. And these are guys and girls that make a living taking pictures. They don't take pictures of weddings on weekends. They take pictures of famous people like Taylor Swift, and they make a lot of money doing that. One of them actually lives in Hendersonville, so I won't drop any names. But I do talk about this person in my book. But I think that when this person takes pictures of people, I think they're giving glory to God. This person does a lot of humanitarian work for the United Nations. He travels all over the world taking pictures of the most impoverished people to give them dignity. Most of these people that he's taken pictures of in third world countries have never seen a photograph of themselves, ever. And they look at it, and some of them begin weeping. I've never seen a picture of me. I look like somebody famous because somebody has a picture of me. I'm holding a picture of myself. I've never seen a printed picture of me. I've only seen my reflection in a mirror, or I've only seen my reflection in water. I've never seen something printed on paper that's me. This is what I look like, everybody. Look at that. Isn't that crazy? And he gives them dignity, and he gives them a little bit of that imago Dei. And I think every time that we're able to do that, every time we're able to create something that God has created us to write, create, draw, sing, compose, play on an instrument, I think we are giving a lot of glory to God in that way. To create is to worship. When you do the work that only you can do, you glorify the God who made you. Got so excited I left my notes way behind. Okay. Thanks you guys for hanging with me. So part of why I wrote this book, Human as a New Vinyl, is, and I don't get to, I didn't write this to be a Christian book. I wrote it to have timeless, God-driven principles in it, and I'm a believer, so it's got, I think, God's fingerprints all in it, but I didn't write it or publish it under a Christian label as a Christian book, because I wanted a lot of people out there in the world to see value in it and to, believe it or not, publishing a Christian book makes it really popular in Christian circles, but not usually not anywhere else. So I really wanted for artists of every stripe, people in Hollywood, people who are doing the SAG-AFTRA strikes, people in the Writers Guild of America, musicians who may or may not be believers. artists from all over the world in countries far away from here to be able to read this and to be able to maybe see a little glimmer of the Imago Dei in there. And I do tell some stories about Imago Dei in this book. So this has been my attempt as a missionary kid. I grew up on the mission field, and I've always thought about everything that I try to do being a witness to more people. So when someone said, hey, you could probably sell a lot more of these books if you publish it under like Thomas Nelson or one of these Christian publishers. And I said, well, yeah, but I'm not about selling this book to make money. I really want to get these ideas out there, and I want it to reach an audience of people who normally wouldn't show up in church, but they might be out there creating something, writing something, doing something really cool out there, and they might be like, oh, that's cool. So I'll tell you just a little bit about the book now. So vinyl, why human is the new vinyl? Well, again, we've talked about humans and how we're created in the image of God. And vinyl records, like vinyl records. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? Some young people don't really even know what that is. I mean, they kind of know in concept what it is, but a lot of people don't. Until I bought my son, he's a senior at Belmont, until I bought him a record player and vinyl records, he'd never really actually interacted with that technology before. He'd never really even seen a CD before. And I had a drawer full of cassette tapes, and he was like, what is this strange and ancient alchemy? What is this thing that you have, Father? There's a tape between two, little spools, and what? And you would put this in a machine and press play? Like, wow, this is bizarre. He had never seen such a thing. So anyway, vinyl was the way that a lot of us in the room experienced music for the first time, right? It was the medium from the 1920s until the early 1980s. It was the main way that people listened to music, right? DJs spun records. They're called disc jockeys, not because they had CDs, because they had vinyl discs, and they were jockeying them around so we could listen to them, right? What you will love, those of you in the room who have some experience in life, what you'll love is that this book goes through a lot of that nostalgia of how radio came to be, how vinyl records, the history of vinyl records from the phonograph, from Edison and all Berliner and all the early discs, and it goes through the history of music and jukeboxes and all that cool, just old Americana. It's all in there. So, but vinyl records, they almost died in the 1980s. Oh, I don't have it here. Okay, let me go back. I didn't put any of these stats in there. I thought I did. So in the 1980s, in 1984, vinyl had its last big year, and it's because Michael Jackson's Thriller came out. Michael Jackson, Thriller, sold 78 million units in just like a 2-year period, which is unbelievable. I mean, it blew every record out. So, but that was the last big year for vinyl, and then CDs came out. When CDs came out, the vinyl industry started tanking, and it took 20 years, but 20 years later, in 2004, vinyl sales had reached 500,000 worldwide, from 1 billion in 84 to 500,000. That's a billion unit free fall. 1 billion vinyl records were sold in 1984. 500,000 were sold in 2004. Everybody thought vinyl was dead. You know what's crazy? Vinyl's making this massive comeback now. Like, vinyl record stores are like popular again. You go in and you see these cool hip kids like buying vinyl records. I'm like, wow, these kids are like under 30 and they're buying vinyl records. How do they play them? And they're like, oh, we got a turntable. I got my dad's turntable out of the attic, and I dusted it off, and it works great. And I'm like, this is awesome. So vinyl has made this massive comeback, and in 2025, it's projected to sell 360 million units again. So it's not quite to where it was, but it's a third of the way there. So I'm excited about that. I think it's making a huge comeback. The reason I love that so much is because vinyl is a lot like the human being, right? It's messy. It's imperfect. It lives in friction. This needle in this micro groove, spinning at 33 and a third RPMs. You know, it's like a tenuous relationship. If you stomp your foot on the floor a little too hard, the record can skip. You know, it's beautiful. And with vinyl records, you can't take them to the beach. Have you ever seen anybody with a record player on the beach? No. Have you ever seen anybody with a record player on a hike? Nope. Right? MP3s are great for that, or M4As, or whatever digital files you have, AAC files. But you don't see vinyl record players in cars, right? They don't travel well. They're a pain. Vinyl skips, vinyl's brittle, vinyl warps in the sun. Why would it make a comeback? Well, because it has a lot of things that these slick little files that can float around in the ether don't have. You have to take the vinyl record out of the sleeve. You flip it over in your hand. You blow the dust off. You have to set it on the turntable. You have to delicately put that little needle in the groove and be sure it's all lined up. And it goes, you hear the dust and the scratches and the little imperfections. But then you hear this warm analog sound that sounds better than any CD. Sounds better than any CD ever could, and than any digital file. Digital lossless audio is an oxymoron, because you've lost a lot when you listen to a digital song. You've lost a lot that you get back when you listen to that vinyl record. That's part of why I wrote this book, is because I'm like, human beings and human creativity is going to make a comeback in the AI age, and I really believe that. Most artists right now are really nervous about AI taking their jobs, taking their creative work, because with AI you can write papers, you can create photographs, you can create music, you can create sound scores for entire films with a few text prompts. You can create beautiful photorealistic pictures of landscapes and cities, and you can create virtual worlds with prompts now. It's unbelievable. And a lot of human artists in this city are scared to death about their livelihood. And they're going on strike, like the SAG-AFTRA strikes, and they're wondering about what does the future of human creativity hold? And as a believer, I'm like, yeah, is this a threat to the imago Dei in us? Is this a threat to the thing that God created us to do? Ironically, through LLMs, through language, through large language models, and God is the God of language? No, we as believers, we got to get this back, man. We got to get this back. This is our turf. This is our God. Our God created this world. Our God created these people to be creative. Our God is the God of language, the God of words. No, this is our turf, man. This isn't them out there. This was our story before it was anybody else's story. So that's part of why I wrote this book. AI can imitate words, but the breath behind them, it cannot imitate the breath behind them. It can generate songs, but it can't worship, right? It can generate songs with AI, but it can't worship the living God. So, key idea is you were made to make, and when you do that, God is glorified. AI is here. It's going to change everything. It really will. It already has, but it's going to get crazier. Some people have asked me, do I think that AI is going to end humanity? I don't know. It's above my pay grade. Might. I don't know. But right now, I know it's threatening human creativity, and that's what has me the most worried. We were built for such a time as this. The God who spoke light into the darkness is still speaking through his Spirit and through his image in you, every single one of you. Remember that you are God's workmanship. Go echo the Creator and create what only you can create. Okay, I think that's it. Okay. So if something stirred in you tonight and you want to explore these ideas more, the books are in the back. I'm not all about trying to sell a bunch of books. I just really want to get these ideas out, and I want the church to wake up and say, yes, this is our story, this is our fight. All right, any questions?
Yeah, so I have the mic first, and then I'll come back. But I wanted you to really quickly, as I go over here, could you tell us a little bit about Verified Human?
Oh, yeah.
You mentioned that you're a founder. Could you tell us a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, so I founded a company in 2023 after all this stuff happened with my son. And it was basically, it's a movement called Verified Human, and there's a couple of hundred writers, visual artists, musicians, voice actors that are a part of this, visual artists that are a part of this movement. And basically what they can do, there's a little, you can't see it, but you'll be able to see it in the book. There's a little symbol. Oh, you know what? Actually, I think I might have. See that little symbol on the edge of the book, that VH? It's kind of, it almost looks like a backwards L and an H. That's the symbol for the verified human. And basically, it's kind of like a fair trade label is for coffee or for food, you know? It's a label for created media. So people who write a song according to the verified human standards can say, hey, this song was made in this certain way. I didn't use AI in these ways to make this poem, this book, this song, this photograph, this picture or whatever. So that's what verified human is. And if you have some interest in doing that, I'm going to put a QR code up on the screen at the end, and you can just take a picture of that, and I'd love for you to check it out. And if you're interested in joining, it's free. So I'd love to have you. If you're a creator and you want to be a part of the verified human movement, I would love to have you. If you join, I will write you a personal letter with my own terrible typing saying, hey, I'm so glad you joined. Let me know if you need anything. So,
What's the best AI?
what's the best AI? It depends on what you're doing. So I've gone back and forth. Since I'm a writer, I'm usually looking at these in terms of writing. I mean, for visual arts, probably Midjourney and Stable Diffusion are still tops. For writing, it goes back and forth between Claude and ChatGPT. ChatGPT was the best first, and it was the best for about 18 months. Then Claude sort of snatched the pebble from its hand and became much better for another year. But now ChatGPT is starting to edge it out, or started to at the end of last year. Now Claude is back, so they're in that race together. Gemini and some of those other AIs, Copilot, they're not even really in the game for me as a writer as I look at what they're doing. So that's my humble opinion. What's that? What did teachers not? Yeah, give him the mic because I couldn't hear.
Like, what AI like can you use that they can like not predict which AI, like if you're using AI?
Okay, so what AI can you use to trick teachers? Yeah, okay, that's a fair question. It really depends. If you use any AI to write a paper with, like your teacher gives you a prompt and says, write a paper comparing this poem to this poem, and you're like, I'm gonna take that prompt and put it in ChatGPT, it's gonna write you a good paper, right? And then your teacher is gonna take that paper, if they're smart, and they're gonna put it in something called turnitin.com, or they're gonna put it in a Grammarly editor or one of these AI detectors, and they're gonna see that the word tokens that were chosen to put all those sentences together match algorithmic tokens, and they're weighted in exactly the same ways. And they'll know instantly that you used AI to write this. Even if you throw in adjectives and cherry bombs and misspellings and all that stuff, you really can't fool the detectors very much anymore. So any of the mainstream ones aren't gonna fool the AI detectors. If you're just trying to get by a teacher's radar and write a paper that you didn't write, if you wanna cheat, you can use any of them. But I wouldn't recommend doing that because you're really just robbing yourself of a great opportunity to become a good writer and not just a good prompter.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so basically I have some family members who are specifically working with Christian film. I mentioned this a little bit to you.
Yes.
They're also working as executive producers on several possible films, and this is all in the Christian movie industry. So my question, I'll explain the situation, and then my question is kind of where do you think that the line is? Because it started to become more of a conviction when it had to do with things that they were creatively doing that came from their own, like for example, one of them is a songwriter. Mm-hmm. Thank you. And so the songwriting portion, once they started to see how AI could help with that became more of a conviction. But before that, they were using the AI to generate images, and the images were basically just used for pitching to investors. And so I personally because I worked on some of the music with the song that they were trying to pitch to get the project off the ground, I was not personally comfortable with the AI images being used. But then I also didn't have like 100% a solid good reason why it couldn't just be used for the pitching process. So my question is, like, when you're trying to figure out where is the line in using it, and when we're talking about creativity, it's hard because in like this situation, you have people that may not have a lot of money to spend or may not spend any money at all on images. They may still use free images off the web. So where do you feel like the line is when we're really trying to determine we've gone too far? Like, how do we know that we've gone too far? Because sometimes I feel like it does come to a matter of conviction, and I want to follow by saying they have a lot of influence over the creative direction of not just their own project, but the other projects that are coming into this space. And it's kind of like, in my mind, they're a big influence on where the Christian movie industry could be going if they were to get these projects picked up.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great question. So where do you draw the line between using too much AI versus your human creation, and what do you disclose to your audience is really the heart of the question. Then becomes, well, it depends. It depends on so many things. Like in life, there's no clear line, like you've crossed the line. The line is a gradient of color. So you have to say, what am I communicating? What's my purpose for using AI? What does my audience expect? So am I duping my audience by giving them something they think is created by a human when really it's been created by not a human? And if I'm duping my audience in that way, is anybody going to catch me? Maybe not. They might not catch the student who writes a paper using ChatGPT and turns it in and gets an A. But that student has to look at themselves in the mirror every day and say, you know what, I cheated. I'm a cheater. And so I think that question is a really tricky one. And I would love to talk to them about, your friends, about this, because the line is hard, but I do get into that in the book quite a bit. And I will just say that a lot of it has to do with this idea of trust, right? Does your audience trusting you to give them a product that you wrote? When you sign your name to something and say, hey, this poem entered into this contest by Micah Voraritskul, right? I'm entering this poem in a contest where the rules are understood to be, these are poems written by people. This is not a competition of AI poems. This is a competition between people. So if I write a poem using AI, I can write a beautiful sonnet using ChatGPT. It'll win. It'll be better than most sonnets that anybody can write, right? But if I turn that in and say that I did it, then I'm violating trust. I'm breaking the audience's trust. I'm breaking the trust of the people in the organization. So one of the guys that I'm in touch with is a guy named Boris Eldigson. He's an artist in Germany. He's a photographer. And he won the Sony World Photography Contest in 2023. I'm going to say that again. He won the Sony World Photography Contest. Number one, first prize in 2023, with a photograph called The Electrician of two women in the 1950s or 60s. And he created this image using DALL-E, which is an AI model. And on the stage, in his tuxedo in London, he says, I will not accept this award because I did not take this photograph. This photograph was generated by an AI model, and it duped all of you. I don't know if I agree with doing it that way, but he made a point. He made his point, and that is that it's possible to get away with it. It's possible to cross the line. He entered a contest with an AI photograph to make a point, and he duped all the human judges. In a world where you can't differentiate between something that AI has created and what a human has created now, it creates a whole new set of ethics. So I'll be on a team at Belmont University as they're wrestling with how do we teach our students that are going to be songwriters and filmmakers and photographers and people in the creative industries, some of them Christian, some of them not, but how are we going to teach them how to deal with some of these ethical issues? How do we train them to deal with this? And this is a real issue, and there's no easy answer, but that's a great question. Thanks.
Any other questions?
So full disclosure, I'm a software developer, and we use it's encouraged for us to use AI in so many facets of everything that we do to essentially ease the burden of the corporate monster who's turning out all the software development projects. If they're listening to this online, I'm sorry, it's true. When I think about it, when I look at it, how do you distinct between the generations that have used technology like machines to build cars and turn out the watches that we wear and all these different things where machines have driven the process based on maybe not human language prompts, but language prompts to say, do this, do this, do this, and the machine prompts, machine language, and the language of human language now to say, this is what I'm trying to get to. Here's my architectural plan from A to Z.
That's a great question, and that I hope you get this book because I talk a lot about how humans have used innovations historically in every creative field. Do you guys remember when, I'm asking some people, do you remember when Texas Instruments came out with the first pocket calculator? It was 1974. That was the year I was born. The first $10 pocket calculator came out, and math teachers worldwide bemoaned the future of math education. They're going to cheat. They're not going to learn how to do math anymore. My son is a math and computer science major. Didn't turn out to be true, all right? So humans use tools all the time to do work fast. So one of the human traits is better, cheaper, faster. How can I do things better, cheaper, faster? How can I do them better? How can I do them less expensively so I can make more money? And how can I do them faster, more efficiently? We're always, we're bent to do that. We're bent to find tools to make our work faster. And if we're having to churn out tons of code for the corporate machine, right, to get our job done and to meet the deadline, man, vibe coding in Claude is a great way to go because you can get a lot of stuff done real fast. Your code's going to be messy, it's going to have some bugs in it, but you know what? You'll deliver on time. And then you can work out the bugs on the far end. In some cases, using AI makes sense, right? If you're needing to generate a picture of people eating pizza for a flyer, use AI. Don't go out and try and search it and figure out if you need to download this $25 royalty-free image. Just have AI make it. It's a picture of people eating pizza. It's not the execution of Lady Jane Grey or the Mona Lisa. It's just for a flyer. It's disposable. So yeah, I'm not anti-AI. I'm pro-AI. I hope AI makes life a lot better. I love that it makes cars safer and that medical diagnosis better. Those of us who are getting older, I'm like, thank goodness that these AIs can read radiological images better than human doctors can. Because I don't want something slipping by a radiologist, right? And then they're like, oh, well, sorry, we missed that tumor. Oh, well, AI caught it, thank God. I think it's great in a lot of ways, but again, it's the expectation of the audience. If your employer is saying, we want human code only, which I don't think they would say, we want human-generated code only, then you would have a problem. But if they say, hey, we need you to get this project done on a deadline, yeah, man, vibe code away, get it done.
All right, anything else? I will say my company, we have developers. We have a development arm, we write software. In the last couple of weeks, we've actually put out some very strict rules about what we can and can't do.
I would imagine.
What models we can and can't use. And for developers, they have a list of here's where you can use AI and here's where you can use it to start, but then you have to do this as the human because it is what kind of makes our company successful.
Absolutely. So, I think that's great. That's great.
I'm thinking back to what you talked about at the beginning when you said that taxonomy came before technology, that the animals were being brought to the humans for the humans to name them, and then later on there's technology. But I'm thinking beyond naming the animals, and maybe technology is a tool that helps us to do that. But then there was an aspect of keeping or tending. We've been doing a Wednesday night study here on keeping creation. I finished a sermon series here that I changed after the first week to keeping Sabbath, like the difference between finding Sabbath versus keeping Sabbath. How do you keep a Sabbath? How do you keep the earth? How do you keep something? And so I'm curious if you see, is AI anything other than just technology? And is that maybe why people are getting kind of afraid, because they're forgetting that at the end of the day, it is just a technology and nothing more than any other kind of technology? Or do you think there's something fundamentally different to AI that makes it more than just something within the category of technology?
Yeah, that's a really great question. The latter. AI technology is different from any other human innovation to date. We thought, I remember when congressmen in 1994 were saying the internet's just a fad. It's not going to take off. Well, how wrong were they, right? Think about how the internet has changed human life across the planet, even for people who don't know what the internet is. It's changed life for every human being, all 7.5 billion of us on the planet. Computers, cell phones, smartphones, all these things have come around in the last 25 years, And so all these developments are big. These are what I would call bantamweight technologies compared to AI, which is a super heavyweight. It is punching harder, faster than any other technology by far. It is going to dwarf all of the rest of these in terms of its impact on human life on the planet. That's why it's so scary, is that they're worried about AI having agency. It's going to start making decisions without consulting us. That's when it really gets scary. And like I said, it's a little above my pay grade to go that far. Like, I don't want it to get dark. But yeah, it's a big deal. AI is a big deal, and it's going to be a bigger deal. So I think it's far more uncertain what's going to happen with AI than any other human technology in history. We are living in a time now in 2025 where we are on the edge of a history-making, a precedential history-making technology, and that's artificial intelligence.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Micah, for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Everybody, make sure you thank Micah.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
It's been a great night, and I hope you've at least learned a little bit. And if you haven't picked up the book, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you buy the book. Micah's not gonna do that, but I think you'll find it really interesting. And he's right. The story within it of technology and how we as humanity have done stuff, especially when he's talking about amplification, microphones, vinyl. He skips 8 tracks, but we'll forgive him for that. They were horrible. But goes through all of that and how we've adapted, but how he does talk about how different AI is for us. And it does touch all of our lives. So I hope that this is something you're able to look into, picking up one of these books. And thank you so much for being here tonight.